Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Class 11 for the academic year 2020 and 2021. Before we proceed into the lessons, let us have an introduction about Class 11. In Class 11, you have, like previous years, reading, writing, grammar, and textual lessons, along with listening and speaking activities. It is a little different from class 10 that, especially in the writing sections, you have more exercises up to date with the active learning and the activities which are very relevant to our day-to-day life. Right? And your writing activities are exposing you to various aspects of the society or various aspects of general communications in the society or in the world. For example, letter writing, articles, speech, etc. Even you can see the advertisements, posters, invitations, and such kinds of relevant writing areas which are very much necessary for our day-to-day communications. So, before going into the lesson, let me introduce to you the curriculum of 2020 and 21 for class 11. As I told you, it has three sections. Section 1, reading. Section 2, or Section B, writing and grammar. Section C, textual. Let's go a little deep into what the elements are included in each section. Section A, reading. As you know, it's a testing of reading comprehension. It is out of 20 marks. There are two activities or two exercises here. The first one is a reading passage, unseen reading passage, which is of 12 marks. And next one is another reading passage which is meant for making notes out of it. The greatest study skills of ever, we can say, note making. All right, so you have two exercises in reading section. First one is reading comprehension passage, which is of 12 marks, and the second one is reading passage to make notes, that is 8 marks. All right, so in the reading passage 1, we expect that you will have a passage with a 550 to 600 words of length, okay, and which will be used for note making and summarizing. All right, so the other passage, which is often asked as the passage number 1, will contain 350 to 400 words in length, and which will have comprehension questions and word attacks, etc. Okay, and sometimes this reading comprehension passage also can be a poem, and if it's a poem, it will be 28 to 35 lines, and which will assess your comprehension, interpretation, and inference of the context, etc. All right. So what are the type of passages that you can have? The passages can be very factual, sometimes illustrating something, sometimes describing something, sometimes scientific reports of something, or a kind of persuasive passage involving an opinion or an argument, or a literary passage, or an extract from a fiction or prose or a biography or an autobiography, a travelogue, etc. Okay, so this is the A section, two exercises. The first one is a shorter passage, 350 to 400 words, or a poem, 28 lines to 35 lines, and it is for comprehension, and you have to answer questions based on that. Second one is a note-making passage, which is a little bit lengthier one, 550 to 600 words or so. So you will have to make notes out of it, and followed by that you have to make the summary of it. All right, so this is what 12 plus 8, 20 marks, first part of your test paper. Okay, that's reading. Now let's come to writing. Writing is very elaborate and very interesting this year. We have a lot of activities which are very relevant and attractive as well for us to do. A little drawing work also can be into that. So it is just about our society or what is happening in the general communication around us. Okay, so we have four questions in the writing sections. So the first one is a short composition like you had previously. You had a notice or a message or something, but we have a notice or a poster making, which is very relevant, and advertisements like classified advertisement, display advertisements, etc., which you see on the billboards or see on newspaper, on television, etc. So how you're able to make that is the first part of the writing section. And you have posters and advertisements and creative writing about it, all these areas included in that one. It's a 4 marks, and it's a 50 words kind of a short answer. All right, so followed by that, the second one is a long answer question, and specifically letters. I know you have studied a few letters, business letters, in the previous year, class 9 and 10, or specifically class 10. So we have such a business and official letters here, and you will have two letters here. So let us see what are the types of letters. Okay, so the first one is a business or official letter for making inquiries, registering a complaint, asking for or giving information, placing order, and sending replies. Okay, some of these you have done in your class 10. The next one is letter to the editor, giving suggestions, opinions on an issue, providing in a realistic context. It is for newspaper. Okay, it's for a report. It may be based on a report or an article or etc. Okay, so then next one is application for job with biodata, or we call it resume. Okay, resume. So application for job with biodata and resume. All right, so next one, letter to the school authorities regarding admissions, school issues, requirements, suitability of courses, etc. All right, so out of all these, two letters will come. Okay, so now we have the next one is a long answer question. So first one is a short answer kind of question, short composition we have learned. And second one is all letters. You have two letters. And the third one is a very long answer question, which can either be an article or a speech or a report or a narrative or a debate writing. Okay, any of these based on the contemporary issues. Okay, so this is what the section of writing. It has 8 marks, right? 150 to 200 words. So to summarize the writing section, the first one is a short composition carrying 4 marks, 50 words. There is there's a notice, a poster, advertisement, invitation, replies. All right. So next one is a grammar section. So this writing and grammar come together for 30 marks. Okay, so grammar section, the entire grammar of English is summarized into 3 types of questions. The first one is error correction, editing, task, close passages, or fill in the blanks passages. Okay, or reordering of the jumbled groups of sentences. Sometimes converting one sentence type to the another, which is called the transformation of sentences. All right, this is what about the writing and grammar. Next one is the literature section, and we have 2 books here, textbooks here. This is of 30 marks. You know, the textbooks are Hornbill, which contains 8 lessons with poems. And the second one is Snapshots. This is a short story collection which contains 10 lessons. All right, so this is what the 2 textbooks. Now let us get familiarized to what are the different types of questions being asked from these 2 textbooks. All right, so the first one is extract. Okay, and an extract from a poem which will have 3 questions. You have to answer only 2 questions in that one. You're familiarized to that one in the previous class as well. So next one is a 5 short answer questions, 30 to 40 words, and 3 questions will be from hornbill and 2 questions will be hornbill from prose and poem, and 2 questions will be from the other textbooks. Okay, so it will be 5 into 10 marks. Next one, one long answer question from hornbill based on the prose lessons, 120 to 150 words. It is 6 marks. Okay, next one is a long answer question from the snapshot, that is 120 to 150 words, 6 marks. Okay, and the last long answer question is again from hornbill, 120 to 150 words. So it will be asked to test your analytical skills and evaluative skills about the events and incidents of a lesson. All right, so you have 2 books, hornbill main book and snapshots, the supplementary reader. All right, this is all about literature. So your paper contains 80 marks questions, and remaining 20 marks will be for assessment of speaking and listening, ASL. All right, so this is what the complete structure of your question paper. And with this knowledge, let us move on to the next part of let's move on to our lessons. Okay, so we're going to start with the hornbill, the first lesson, the portrait of a lady by Khushwant Singh. All right, an Indian writer, early Indian writer in English, who has made such a big mark in the English literature of India. So I would like to talk a little bit about Khushwant Singh. Later part you will watch some videos on him as well. Okay, so Khushwant Singh was born on February 2nd, 1915 and died on 20th March 2014. Almost 99 years he could outlive. All right, he was an Indian author, a lawyer, a diplomat, journalist, and a politician. His experience in the 1947 partition of India inspired him to write the great novel, the famous of all his novels, I can say, Train to Pakistan in 1956, which was later filmed in 1998. Okay, and this is the best known novel of Khushwant Singh. All right. So let us know something more about his biographical details, because he was born in such a time, a century behind, and he was such a kind of erudite person, having great comprehensive views and critical attitude to everything for the welfare of the country or the world. So born in Punjab, Khushwant Singh was educated in Modern School, New Delhi, St. Stephen's College, and graduated from the Government College, Lahore. Later, he earned his LLB degree in law to become a lawyer from the King's College, London, and was called to the bar at the London Inner Temple. After working as a lawyer in the Lahore High Court for 8 years, he joined the Indian Foreign Service upon the independence of India from the British Empire in 1947. He was appointed journalist in All India Radio in 1951, and then moved to the Department of Mass Communications of UNESCO at Paris in 1956. These last 2 careers encouraged him to pursue a literary career as a writer. As a writer, he was the best known for his trenchant secularism, humor, sarcasm, and abiding love for poetry. His comparisons of social and behavioral characteristics of Westerners and the Indians are laced with acid wit. He is so critical and cynical, and sometimes so much humorous in his criticism about the ways of the world, the attitudes of the people. He served as an editor of several literary and news magazines, as well as 2 newspapers. Through 1970s and 80s, his career was as editor of various news magazines and newspapers. Between 1980 and 1986, he served as a member of parliament in Rajya Sabha, the upper house of the Parliament of India. So, Khushwant Singh was awarded with Padma Bhushan in 1974. However, he returned the award in 1984 in protest against the Operation Blue Star against the Sikh community, and which the Indian army raided Amritsar in that time. In 2007, he was awarded the Padma Vibhushan, the second highest civilian award of India. That is what about the great life and career of Khushwant Singh. Now I would like to tell you something about his novels or the writings. He has written numerous books, and I would like to name a few. Okay, he has written a book called The Mark of Vishnu and Other Stories in 1950, The Voice of God and Other Stories in 1957, The Sikh Today in 1959, The History of the Sikhs, The Ranjit Singh, the Maharaja of Punjab, then Bride of Sahib and Other Stories, Black Jasmine, Tragedy of Punjab, The Collector Stories of Khushwant Singh, Delhi, a novel, Not a Nice Man to Know, The Best of Khushwant Singh, We Indians, Women and Men in My Life, Declaring Love in Four Languages, India an Introduction, The Company of Women, Truth, Love and Little Malice, With Malice Towards One and All, The End of India, Burial at Sea, Paradise and Other Stories, etc. All right, these are some of the glimpses of his works, and there are a lot many. And if you get chances, try to read one or two. And your library also must have some books of Khushwant Singh. He's a must read writer in the sense of his excellent frankness and direct and straightforward approach to the reality, and the way he is a critic of the reality of life, politics, and the society in micro level of his own place, and at the macro level at a global scenario. All right, he was a short story writer and a poet as well. And beyond that, Khushwant Singh is very famous for his Khushwant Singh jokes. Sometimes it is completely covered with a kind of slangs and a kind of distaste of language as well. But he is famous for his great joke books as well. All right. So with this, let's try to know the story that we are going to learn today, The Portrait of a Lady by Khushwant Singh. As the title suggests, Portrait of a Lady. A lady. Okay, it's he's talking about the general sense of the term portrait of a lady. You know, portrait is the picture or a painting, right? Here you're going to get the pen picture of a woman in the story, and the woman is none other than his great loving grandmother. All right. So in the story, as a bit autobiographical, or you can say that a part of his autobiography, this story is revealing the intense, strong love and affection of his grandmother for him, and the great relationship they had together. All right. So when the story begins, we see the childhood of Khushwant Singh, how he looked at his grandmother and how they were together in the village, and later how they moved to the city to join their parents, join his parents, and how slowly the relationship between them got snapped, the alienation, how the distancing has happened. And throughout the story, the writer is trying to portray the grandmother as a strong, powerful personality with her strong approach to any aspects of life, her concept of religion, the concept of life, concept of fulfillment, etc. All right, that catches our attention. And the writer also describes in vivid picture the last moment of her life and how resolute she was, what a strong woman she was, how she grows as a tall figure in our memory when we complete reading the story. Okay, this is what the story is all about. Though it externally looks a story about a woman, specifically his grandmother, it represents the grandparents of everybody in the world. Okay? Though it is a kind of vivid memory of his grandmother, it poignantly penetrates into the reality of the society that we are very callous and indifferent towards the elderly. We don't bother about their well-being, we don't bother about their sentiments, we don't bother about their sensitivity. Rather, we take them for granted towards their old age, and we look upon them as a nuisance or a kind of unwanted thing, or a kind of people who do not really have the feelings as you have. And we may sometimes treat them as the other. All right, they are a part of us but not a big part of us. Okay, they are just not a necessity for us in the sense. Okay, it also discusses in an implied manner the problem of negligence of the old age, how we treat the old age in an indifferent manner. All right, so this is a penetrating issue that is being discussed behind the beautiful description of the memory about the grandmother. So, the portrait of a lady, the title, The Portrait of a Lady, stands as a representative for all the grandmothers or the grandparents in the world to whom how our treatment turned to be. Okay, our behavior and attitude towards the old age is the issue discussed here indirectly. Okay, so aging and the problems, how the society looks upon the aged, how the family treats an old age. Okay, so these are the issues we have to discuss in the lesson. All right, so I think you have got a clear idea about class 11, the question paper pattern, and you have got some idea about Khushwant Singh. And now we're going to listen to the story. All right, so you know, Portrait of a Lady is a title of another great novel written by Henry James in 1880 81. All right, so he was a great British novelist. Here, Portrait of a Lady is a memorial tribute of grandson Khushwant Singh to his grandmother. All right, now I request you to listen to the story in the form of an audiobook. The Portrait of a Lady by Khushwant Singh. My grandmother, like everybody's grandmother, was an old woman. She had been old and wrinkled for 20 years that I had known her. People said that she had once been young and pretty, and even had a husband, but that was hard to believe. Grandfather's portrait hung above the mantelpiece in the drawing room. He wore a big turban and loose wedding clothes. His long white beard covered the best part of his chest, and he looked at least 100 years old. He didn't look like the sort of a person who would have a wife or children. He looked as if he could only have lots and lots of grandchildren. As for my grandmother being young and pretty, the thought was almost revolting. She often told us of the games she used to play as a child. That seemed quite absurd and undignified on her part, and we treated it like the fables of prophets she used to tell us. She had always been short and fat and slightly bent. Her face was a crisscross of wrinkles running from everywhere to everywhere. No, we were certain she had always been as we had known her. Old, so terribly old that she could not have grown older, and stayed at the same age for 20 years. She could never have been pretty, but she was always beautiful. She hobbled about the house in spotless white, with one hand resting on her waist to balance her stoop, and the other telling the beads of her rosary. Her silver locks were scattered untidily over her pale, puckered face, and her lips constantly moved in inaudible prayer. Yes, she was beautiful. She was like a winter landscape in the mountains, an expanse of pure white serenity, breathing peace and contentment. My grandmother and I were good friends. My parents left me with her when they went to live in the city, and we were constantly together. She used to wake me up in the morning and get me ready for school. She said her morning prayer in a monotonous sing-song while she bathed and dressed me in the hope that I would listen and get to know it by heart. I listened because I loved her voice, but never bothered to learn it. Then she would fetch my wooden slate, which she had already washed and plastered with yellow chalk, a tiny earthen ink pot, and a reed pen, tie them all in a bundle, and hand it to me. After a breakfast of thick stale chapati with a little butter and sugar spread on it, we went to school. She carried several stale chapatis with her for the village dogs. My grandmother always went to school with me because the school was attached to the temple. The priest taught us the alphabet and the morning prayer, while the children sat in the rows on either side of the veranda singing the alphabet or the prayer in chorus. My grandmother sat inside reading the scriptures. When we had both finished, we would walk back together. This time, the village dogs would meet us at the temple door. They followed us to our home, growling and fighting with each other for the chapatis we threw to them. When my parents were comfortably settled in the city, they sent for us. That was a turning point in our friendship. Although we shared the same room, my grandmother no longer came to school with me. I used to go to an English school in a motor bus. There were no dogs in the streets, and she took to feeding sparrows in the courtyard of the city house. As the years rolled by, we saw less of each other. For some time, she continued to wake me up and get me ready for school. When I came back, she would ask me what the teacher had taught me. I would tell her about English words and the little things of Western science learning, the law of gravity, Archimedes' principle, the world being round, etc. This made her unhappy. She couldn't help me with my lessons. She didn't believe in things they taught at English school and was distressed that there was no teaching about God and the scriptures. One day, I announced that we were being given music lessons. She was very disturbed. To her, music had lewd associations. It was the monopoly of harlots and beggars and not meant for gentlefolk. She said nothing, but her silence meant disapproval. She rarely talked to me after that. When I went up to the university, I was given a room of my own. The common link of friendship was snapped. My grandmother accepted her seclusion with resignation. She rarely left her spinning wheel to talk to anyone. From sunrise to sunset, she sat by her wheel spinning and reciting prayers. Only in the afternoon she relaxed for a while to feed the sparrows. While she sat in the veranda breaking the bread into little bits, hundreds of little birds collected round her, creating a veritable bedlam of chirrupings. Some came and perched on her legs, others on her shoulders, some even sat on her head. She smiled, but never showed them away. She used to be the it used to be the happiest half an hour of the day of her. When I decided to go abroad for further studies, I was sure my grandmother would be upset. I would be away for 5 years, and at her age one could never tell. But my grandmother could. She was not even sentimental. She came to leave me at a railway station, but didn't talk or show any emotion. Her lips moved in prayer. Her mind was lost in prayer. Her fingers were busy telling the beads of her rosary. Silently she kissed my forehead, and when I left, I cherished the moist imprint as perhaps the last sign of physical contact between us. But that was not so. After 5 years, I came back home and was met by her at the station. She didn't look a day older. She still had no time for words, and while she clasped me in her arms, I could hear her reciting her prayers. Even on the first day of my arrival, her happiest moments were with her sparrows, whom she fed longer and with frivolous rebukes. In the evening, a change came over her. She didn't pray. She collected the women of the neighborhood, got an old drum, and started to sing. For several hours, she thumped the sagging skins of the dilapidated drum and sang of the homecoming of warriors. We had to persuade her to stop to avoid overstraining. That was the first time since I had known her that she didn't pray. The next morning, she was taken ill. It was a mild fever, and the doctor told us that it would go. But my grandmother thought differently. She told us that her end was near. She said that since only a few hours before the close of the last chapter of her life she had omitted to pray, she was not going to waste any more time talking to us. We protested, but she ignored our protest. She lay peacefully in bed, praying and telling her beads. Even before we could suspect, her lips stopped moving and the rosary fell from her lifeless fingers. A peaceful pallor spread on her face, and we knew that she was dead. We lifted her off the bed, as is customary, and laid her on the ground and covered her with a red shroud. After a few hours of mourning, we left her alone to make arrangement for her funeral. In the evening, we went to her room with a crude stretcher to take her to be cremated. The sun was setting, had lit her room and the veranda with a blaze of golden light. We stopped halfway in the courtyard. All over the veranda and in her room, right up to where she lay, dead and stiff wrapped in the red shroud, thousands of sparrows sat scattered on the floor. There was no chirpings. We felt sorry for the birds, and my mother fetched some bread for them. She broke it into little crumbs, the way my grandmother used to, and threw it to them. The sparrows took no notice of the bread. When we carried my grandmother's corpse off, they flew away quietly. Next morning, the sweeper swept the breadcrumbs into the dustbin.